Hello and welcome to the October Town Hall. I'm Michelle Marks, CU Denver Chancellor. I've had the great opportunity to meet over 1,000 people in our community during my first 100 days of listening tour, and hearing from so many of you has been a genuine highlight for me. I'm going to kick off our session today by sharing some updates on how we're doing as of October 13th on safety, on budget, and on key initiatives. I'll plan on talking for about 15 minutes, and then we'll use the rest of our time to bring in our leadership team to answer your questions. First of all, this has been a semester like no other in history, and across America and right here in Colorado, we've seen how spiking COVID cases reversed campus opening decisions and have quarantined entire residence halls. And Colorado has now clearly entered the third wave of the pandemic, and cases and our hospitalizations are up. So despite our fatigue with this pandemic, we cannot let up on our safety culture. The masks, the social distancing, the hand washing, the testing, no large gatherings. And I'm pleased to say that this protocol is working really well for CU Denver. I'm so proud of this campus and really of all of you. We've been able to be operational under the safe return model that many of you helped develop, and we've been managing very well on the COVID front so far. And that could change at any point, but I do want to say how truly grateful I am for this community's response. I need to call out our amazing students first. A couple of weeks ago, Chris Puckett and I handed out Ben & Jerry's ice cream to students living in Lynx Crossing. And there were over 100 students, and the ice cream line was very long. Every student had a mask. Every student stood in a socially distanced line. They were modeling what it takes to remain safe and to remain open. So with this adherence, it's not so surprising that we're doing relatively well for our numbers. We've had 10 cases since August 10th with campus contact. And this is a testament to the good decisions being made by you, by employees, and by our students, both on campus and off campus. And we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the CU Denver Safe Return team, who worked tirelessly over the summer to design a plan for safely bringing us back into operation this fall. And last week, we got to honor the Safe Return team with the CU Can Do Award. There are more than 50 people on this team, including great leadership from Chris Puckett, from Paul Teskey, from Elena Jones on our panel today, as well as Kelly Hupfield. So when we do have cases, we are reacting quickly to test and to trace and to isolate. And we're catching cases both through our reporting process when people feel sick and through asymptomatic testing that continues on campus. Asymptomatic testing is a very important part of our response and of stopping the spread. And right now we have $10 testing for asymptomatic faculty and staff available on our campus, free for students, with an average 32-hour turnaround. And I've done it myself, and it's quick and it's easy. So as we continue to work to get simpler and less expensive testing as it becomes available, we're expecting to have a saliva-based test later this fall, and we're also exploring ways to partner with the state to use cell phone technology to accelerate our tracing strategies. And one important part of this plan is ensuring that we don't further overwhelm our health system with a bad flu season. So let's just talk flu shots for a minute. I got my flu shot at Lynx Crossing last week, and I encourage you to get yours too. It's another way to protect ourselves and each other. So we have all had to alter our lives completely during this pandemic, including the way that we get our work done. And while we certainly wouldn't have wished for this virus, I want to say that I've been impressed with so many of you who found that the adjustments that you've ended up making have actually improved the way we work or the way that we serve our students. And I want to share some of them with you. Remote work has allowed the Center for Undergraduate Exploration and Advising to extend our advising hours into the evenings to better accommodate student schedules. And the same thing with the Learning Resource Center, which has extended the times that tutoring is available. And I want to share a quote from one of our students who said this, quote, "Before this whole Zoom thing, I could never go to your tutoring sessions. With 2 kids, it was just impossible. But now, ever since I came to your session, I understand so much more. Thank you for inspiring me and for making me love physics." So, wow. I also want to share that the School of Education and Human Development faculty member Bud Talbot has used this shift to remote learning to redesign the way he teaches classes for future elementary teachers. So by creating his weekly backyard science videos for the class, he's been inspiring his students to think creatively about how they will teach science in the future. And this has brought about new teaching ideas, like the use of video-based reflections and responses using platforms like Flipgrid, which I think is so cool. And we also have a new student course assistance program, which is comprised of a team of 61 CU Denver students who are providing technical support, like managing the screen sharing and the polling and the breakout groups for over 150 Zoom courses and serving over 7,000 students. And I met one of these student assistants in the LSC elevator one day who told me how this program works. And one faculty member said it was the best idea that anybody has had during the whole pandemic. So I want to give a lot of kudos to Lindsay Hamilton, the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, for conceiving and organizing this program, the first of its kind to provide technical assistance across the entire university using student workers. And we're ramping it up for the spring. We also hosted a virtual career fair that had 278 employer-student sessions and 52 participating employers. And we're now offering virtual new student orientation on both weekends and weekdays and at different times. And because of this, it's open to international students who previously were not able to attend these sessions. More than 200 people are taking advantage of the virtual fitness classes that we're offering, and they're restoring with our yoga and dancing it up with Zumba. And we've also conducted over 500 virtual telehealth counseling sessions. So thank you to all of you, to our community who are finding ways to get the job done, but also to think differently about the upside to these changes so that in the end, we're stronger and that we're serving our students even better. And I want to ask you if you found other ways to innovate or improve on work that we should know about after and keep around after the pandemic. Please send me an email and let me know about it. I think it's great that we're managing to make lemonade out of some of the COVID lemons, but I also recognize that we're facing so many challenges, and the difficulties of working from home and balancing work-life challenges, increased anxiety and depression are all concerns, and I worry about our community and our people. During my listening sessions, I've met some of your children, and I've also gotten a glimpse of some of the challenges that many of you face when you're trying to work and parent within a given workday. So we've revised our telework policy during the pandemic so that our employees who are home and they're having to take care of relatives, kids, parents, anybody else, so you can do this during your work hours as long as you're getting your work done, and talk to your supervisor if you want to take advantage of this. And I know that there is even more that we can do and that we should do. I asked a group of faculty and staff to work on these issues, and they sent out a survey, and we got over 740 responses about the areas of greatest impact on your work and life and your suggestions on how we might be able to address them. And for staff, those concerns are about workplace flexibility and work-life boundaries. And for faculty, the greatest concern was how you'll be evaluated this year and the short and long-term impact that this year is having on tenure and promotion. And this work is doing focus groups now to further review the data, and I'm looking forward to seeing their recommendations. Let's talk about mental health. In our survey, both faculty and staff noted increased mental health concerns. And honestly, I mean, who hasn't struggled during this time? The pandemic, the associated economic hardship, the racial justice movement, the politics of a very heated election season, it's taking a toll on all of us. And so many of the things that we typically use to buffer ourselves, to provide relief, comfort, support, like being with family and friends and traveling or going to movies or seeing music, live music, or even our block party. We don't have access to those in the same ways, and none of us is immune to this. So we are working hard on ways to bring more services and support to campus. But I think there are also simple things that each of us can do to get even better connected. And first is being willing to acknowledge our struggles, and also being willing to take small actions to connect, like sending somebody a text, checking in, or a virtual happy hour after hours. I'm hoping and asking that each of you do something to make these connections and remind each other that we're not alone. Let's talk budget. This is another area where we have been hard hit. And last spring, we planned for a revenue shortfall of, for this fiscal year, of 33 million, which is a 15% reduction from where we were last year. And thanks to the great planning of our teams, that's right about where we landed, with tuition and other revenues being down. So our graduated furlough plan will remain unchanged through June 30th, but we are not anticipating, anticipating additional budget cuts this fiscal year. Our budget team is hard at work preparing for future budget challenges that factor for next year and beyond, that factor in all of the COVID-related uncertainty in our state funding and in our future enrollment. They're modeling different scenarios that anticipate outcomes on all of these fronts. And we are hoping for the best, but we are doing scenario planning for different possibilities, both better and worse, so we are not caught off guard. Before the pandemic, CU Denver had already been cultivating a culture of more shared responsibility and transparency in addressing these financial pressures. The transition to an incentive-based budget model in 2017 and a new strategic enrollment plan effort that we're putting into place now are bringing much needed and new tools to our ability to contend with these fiscal challenges from the pandemic. I'm excited to update you on our progress on issues of equity and racial justice in our community. As you may recall, I spent my first 10 days on the job listening about these issues specifically, which informed a number of commitments that I made for action. And I want to share some initial progress. First, I've launched the search for the next CU Denver specific Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I also appointed the director of our Ethnic Studies program, Professor Faye Coronin, as our first ever faculty fellow to advise me and my leadership team and to work on projects to address issues of concern to our community. And she's already hard at work, meeting with the leadership and working on curriculum diversification and putting together workshops. And I also worked with the Auraria Higher Education campus to establish a new community advisory board to the Auraria Campus Police Department, on which we'll have representation. And I want to thank Omar Montgomery for serving on the launch committee. And here is a sneak preview. This Thursday, I'm going to officially announce the formation of the CU Denver Equity Task Force, which I'm very excited about and which will work over the next 6 months to delve into the core of our challenges, including structural barriers to hiring and promoting underrepresented faculty and staff. And I am delighted to have the School of Education and Human Development's Professor Antoine Jefferson and the School of Public Affairs Professor John Ronquillo chair this task force that will bring together faculty and staff and students and address a host of issues, from exploring how to close our achievement gap to how we create a culture of belonging and recommend an ambitious action plan and investment priorities for us. Regarding the online education initiative, here's a brief update on where we stand. CU Denver's Office of Digital Education has moved to the system to serve all 4 CU campuses. And President Kennedy has put a halt to the system-wide approach that began last year, a shift that I'm pleased about because the focus of these efforts is now moving to our campuses. And I'll be organizing more meetings on this topic this semester for those who want to know more and get involved. And I believe that the further growth and innovation in online and in hybrid education is an area of real opportunity for us. And there are many factors in our favor. One is our long history and our experience in delivering quality education online, and our faculty expertise. And also the importance of education solutions to the types of students that we serve, adult learners and working learners and learners that need that flexibility. And also the importance of our role in the need for more workforce relevant credentials to support the massive post-COVID economic recovery. And also the readiness of our system to financially support the online expansion. And so in the coming weeks, we'll be sending out a communication explaining our plan, engaging faculty and staff in the conversation, and sharing more ways that you can learn. Just a quick update on other leadership searches. We're in the process of hiring for several vice chancellor leadership positions that have experienced recent transition. And I've heard throughout my listening tour about the need for more transparency on high-level searches. In response, we've added a section to my website, to the chancellor's website, specifically on these leadership searches with information that shares committee members, timelines, ways that you can provide input, and nominations if you have them for these roles. And regarding plans for spring semester, as the provost wrote in an email last week, we expect the public health situation is going to remain largely the same in the spring. So we're planning for a spring that looks a lot like this one, with a mix of 4 class formats aimed at enhancing flexibility for our students while keeping the density on campus low. And registration begins November 2nd. So thanks again to everyone who's worked so hard to make this fall work and also to work on spring planning. On November 17th, I'll be delivering the State of the Campus address virtually, of course, and I'm looking forward to sharing more about the themes that have emerged from my listening tour, and also to talk with you about the campus-wide strategic planning effort next semester. I know we've covered a lot of ground and that we have a lot going on. I'd like now to briefly introduce our leadership team that we have with us today on this panel that will help answer your questions. Rod Nairn, of course, our provost, Jennifer Sobenay, our chief financial officer, Chris Puckett, our legal counsel, who with others has been leading our COVID-19 response, Elena Jones, our interim vice provost and senior vice chancellor of student success, and Dean Paul Teskey, the School of Public Affairs, who will be serving as our moderator. Paul?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Chancellor Marks, and thank you for your leadership in your first 100 days. It's been a lot of challenges, but as you just noted, a lot of great things going on as well. Looks like we have about 320 people with us, and so you can start putting questions on the Q&A using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom. But to start us off, we had some questions that came in advance, about 8 of them that I'll pose to our panelists, and then we'll move on to your questions. And really the rest of the time is meant to focus on your concerns and your thoughts. And thank you so much for being here. So first of all, to Chris Puckett, a question from a faculty member. I'm an adjunct faculty member who must travel across the country to teach in Denver. Due to COVID, I'm not comfortable making this trip. Will I be permitted to teach remotely? Chris?
Great, that's a great question, and it's one that we've been talking about since the beginning of this summer, frankly, and something that we worked through this fall, which is if someone is not comfortable coming to campus, they need to try and work through their chair, especially in this context, to try and figure out a way to teach that, possibly remotely or otherwise. We do have the process if somebody isn't comfortable having that conversation with their chair to actually talk with human resources. And there's a link on the COVID website as well as the human resources website where somebody can talk about and indicate if they ask for a modification. One thing that I will just jump onto really quickly here, because it just popped up, how will we know your class is on campus or on Zoom? That process is happening right now in the schools and colleges and the class coordinators. So each of the schools and colleges should be working with their coordinators to identify the course modality for the spring. At the moment, we're right about the same number as far as courses that we anticipate to be either hybrid or on campus. We're right about 22% right now, and we were at the beginning of fall semester about 24%. So we're right in the same magnitude, and we anticipate that that will continue as more classes come online.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Our next question is from a staff member, and it's for our provost, Rod Nairn. Students sometimes don't know if they need to show up in person for the first day for hybrid classes. Can instructors provide at least 1 week of messaging on what is expected on the first day of classes?
Well, thanks for that question. We'll reach out to the deans to get the instructors to make sure that information is readily available either in the syllabus or in Canvas. So, I'm sorry if people haven't been able to get that information yet. We'll try to make sure that that gets available in plenty of time for folks to know what they have to do.
Great. And actually, our next question is also for our provost. It comes from a faculty member. What happens if the administrator in charge of an academic unit wants to schedule a class in person, but the faculty member would prefer to teach remotely because of age or other health risks or concerns about the virus? Does the faculty member have a choice?
So the answer to that is much like the answer to the first question that Chris Puckett gave. We've asked everybody to provide maximum flexibility around this area, especially if somebody's at high risk. And in that situation, we would trust that they would be able to sit down with their supervisor and work that out, whether that would be teaching in a different format or somebody else teaching. If there are some issues, as Chris said, and there's need for documentation of health issues, there's folks in HR that can help with that. But I'm sure we can work this out. This has come up right from the very beginning of the disruption, and we've been able to work our way through those. So I think that should be solvable.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question is also from a faculty member, and I think it probably best goes to Chris Puckett, and it looks to the future. Is there any consideration for doing away with spring break and considering ending classes a week early in the spring?
The short answer is yes. Is there consideration? Absolutely. There are a number of information gathering techniques we're doing at the moment to try and gather more input from our community about what they think ought to happen in the spring. Michael Zinzer and others have been forwarding on to me great research that's being done already out there about the impact of spring break on the distribution of COVID across the country. So I think the answer to the question is absolutely. That's something we're talking about at the moment. And even today, just an hour or so ago, we sent something off to the residents in Links Crossing to get some of their feedback, and we've already gotten 72 responses. So we anticipate having information about that probably in the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you. Another question for Provost Nairn, this time from a student. Will the spring 2021 semester allow for modified grading, assuming we go remote? I wish the option existed right now. For this semester, some classes are harder to learn remotely than others.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Yeah, good question. The spring semester and grading is something that we're talking about in detail right now. It is something that has to be worked out across the system. There is a uniform grading policy that we work with. Actually, I believe that this semester we have extended the P+PF, flexible grading option. We're looking at seeing if we can extend that through the academic year. So there'll be more to come on that, but we're committed, I think, all of the campuses to trying to provide as much flexibility as we can. Grading is something that is the purview of the faculty, and we try to work these things out across all the campuses together.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question is for Chancellor Marks. It's kind of a long question, but it asks about the future of remote work. Specifically, we've seen industry transition many employees to permanent remote positions in the tech and communications field, often translating to reduced costs for the organization through reduced physical space overhead and possible salary adjustments based on cost of living when permanently remote employees relocate to other parts of the country. Will there be opportunities for certain staff in certain roles to transition to fully remote positions even after the pandemic ends and the majority of staff are back on campus?
It's a great question, and we are learning so much about teleworking this semester. And so the answer is yes, there will be more opportunities. We're figuring out what's working really well and what's not working well right now. So we have a lot of information to go on. And we do plan on thinking differently and more flexibly into the future. So we welcome your input into that process, and we hope to be using this academic year to understand how we can better move forward with more telework and more flexible working arrangements into the future.
Great, thank you, Chancellor Marks. The next question comes from a faculty member, and I'll ask Provost Nairn. With the increased time and effort required for faculty to move instruction online in an equitable and quality manner, to provide additional service coming out of issues from COVID, and to accommodate work in a setting that might involve children or elder care or sick family members, time and effort has been limited for some faculty for research. What is the university doing to improve our research environment and accommodate slower progress that faculty might make?
Hey, that's an interesting question. First of all, let me say everybody, I think, appreciates, and we'll just say again, the heroic efforts that all the faculty have made to turn things around for the educational program, but we recognize there's been a lot of impact on the research and creative activity mission as well. So let me take that in two parts. I think the piece was accommodate slower progress. what we've done there already, I think people know, is extended the tenure clock by 1 year for tenure track faculty. The provost and Mike Leidner, the VP for Academic Affairs, have had very preliminary conversations about, do these kind of accommodations need to extend further? I think we all hope for the end of the COVID disruption soon, but the likelihood is that it will continue longer than any of us expected, and we may need to think about extending these accommodations. So we've started to talk about that. Faculty, I think, are also thinking about slower progress and what effect it might have on evaluation. So there are a variety of ways in which we can think about flexibility around evaluation. I would point out, of course, that annual evaluations are very much the purview of the faculty. I mean, they set those parameters. I think it is time for conversations to start about what can we do to recognize, the slower progress and the disruption that's being caused, in some of those areas of evaluation also. As far as the improving the research environment, if there are ways out there that folks have ideas about things that we could do in addition to what we've done already for the research and creative work environment, we'd love to hear about them. I think hopefully people are aware we've prioritized faculty being able to return to their research work, in terms of safe return. If something happens and we have to go in some additional cutbacks, we'll prioritize again to make it possible for that to continue. As far as improving the environment, we've also made it a priority not to cut the funding that's available for research projects. The research office, Bob Damrau's folks, have kept the large and small grant programs and competitions underway. We've made it a priority not to reduce those funds despite all the economic challenges we have. Center for Faculty Development still has funds for young faculty development also. Those will continue on. The only thing that we've had to limit is, of course, the use of those funds for travel. I heard the other day that from a new faculty member that they were struggling to get supplies. If people are having issues with that, let us know. We'll try and work with AHEC or other procurement and make sure that things don't get held up. It's the last thing we need is faculty that we've recruited here that are outstanding and ready to get their career underway to get held up. So if there's something that we can do to help with that, let us know. But those are the things that I'm aware of at this time.
Great. Thanks so much, Provost Nairn. And the last question we had in advance was from a parent, and I'll pose it to Chris Puckett. It's asking whether more music and performance classes are likely to be offered in person for the spring semester on campus.
At this point, the College of Arts and Media is still working through its course scheduling process. I would anticipate that the spring is going to look a lot like this fall, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to lead to large groups or large classes of any kind, whether that be in CAM or in other circumstances. So what I would ask that student to do is continue to stay tuned. November 2nd is going to be when registration opens, but I would expect the spring to look a lot like it did this fall as we continue to see the pandemic continue.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. So we have about 10 or 12 now questions that have come in online. We probably have time to answer them on screen. We'll try to do that. If not, and we get more questions, we have question answerers behind the scenes that'll also deal with it. The first one is from parent of a freshman. Thanks for the updates. We've been impressed how well you've managed the circumstances in the pandemic. Construction has been terrific. Can you give us an update on the new freshman dorm and say whether you expect this year's freshmen, most of whom are not on campus, to be able to be in a dorm next year, again, provided that more students are on campus next year? And I can toss that, I think, to Jennifer Sobonet and maybe the Chancellor.
Sure, I'll take it. And maybe the Chancellor, I don't know where your video camera is set up, but maybe you can even show a picture of City Heights. So City Heights is the first year housing facility that we have been constructing, and it's on budget, it's on schedule, it is planned to be open and ready for the fall semester for our first year students. And of course, Links Crossing is available for students beyond their first year for next fall. Of course, everything is COVID dependent, and the health and safety of everybody is first and foremost on our minds, but it's really exciting. We had the topping off ceremony just a couple of weeks ago. It was outdoors with masks and socially distanced, and it was the top beam of the facility was placed, and we were able to watch it being placed. And so I know a lot of times a lot of students, faculty, and staff enjoy being a part of that ceremony. We had to limit it to a very small group outdoors because of COVID, but it's just really exciting to see that progress that's occurring. I don't know, Michelle, if you can, I know I see that you're in your office. I'm at home for this Zoom webinar, but I'm wondering if, I don't know if you can turn it and show everyone how much that construction project is progressing.
I wish I could. I look at it every day. I have a desktop, so I can't easily manipulate it, but we do need to send out some pictures to the campus community. It's incredibly impressive.
We'll get that out into one of our weekly communications, Karen from University Communications.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question that came in is, should staff members who are currently working remotely assume that we will all continue to work remotely for the spring semester? I'm thinking Chris Puckett might be the best person to start with that.
You know, I think at this point, you know, every day starts with new news about what's going to happen with COVID and whether or not my kids are going to be in person or not. So whether or not someone's going to be remote in the spring, I don't know. Like I said before, I really do think it's likely that we're going to be in this mode of operating for a while. I know another question asked, is there a way we could say, well, people aren't going to be required to come back no earlier than a certain date? You know, unless Dr. Naren or Dr. Marks disagree with me at this point, I couldn't tell you. I really don't know. And I don't know that any of us do. I think what we've done right now is set us up for the best possible future as an institution of higher ed, frankly. And I think I would anticipate that continuing and continuing into the spring. So we'll all have to stay tuned, and I ask that you read your weekly updates that we send out. We spend a lot of time working on those, and many of you review them, but we continue to try and use that as our vehicle to let people know what we can see on the horizon.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And as with all these questions, if other panelists want to add some things or hop on, please do, but otherwise I'll keep moving. The next question is probably best for the provost. Why are students not being offered flexibility through the modified grading P+P no pass for fall? This policy was adopted in light of COVID, and we're still dealing with COVID. Students are taking courses in modalities they may not prefer. They deserve modified grading policy to continue, says the questioner. So Rod Naren, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. So I see there's a couple of questions about modified grading policy, and obviously there's some confusion about this. We are looking to provide additional flexibility and to extend the modified grading policy. I'll work with Carrie John, the registrar, to get a clear communication to people that makes it clear what we're doing and exactly when we'll have clarity around spring, for example. So let's follow up on that one and get a written communication out from the registrar's office.
Okay, great. Yeah, you're right. There's a few other questions very similar. Next, probably for Jennifer Sobonet, have there been any discussions about partially subsidizing faculty or staff for using personal resources while working remotely, such as phone, high-speed internet, etc.?
So first I want to say thank you to everybody, faculty, staff, students, for adjusting to working from home. And nobody anticipated this, obviously, and it's not easy. And I would say this, that with our budget cuts that we've had to endure, $33 million cuts this year, and we'll be scenario planning for cuts in the future, depending on how the budget turns out. But at this point, no, we are not able to provide subsidies for that type of thing. Obviously, if if you need to work from campus, there is the ability to do that and work with your supervisor on doing that. But at this point, things like your home internet and things like that. No, obviously make sure that you're getting, supplies and things like that from the campus, because we are providing those.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer. The next question I think might best go to the Chancellor. Given that the long-term effects of COVID will inevitably mean more students online and remote with less in-person services being needed, do you foresee major staffing changes on the CU Denver campus? If so, will CU consider current staff members pivoting and adapting their job descriptions to fill other or new needs versus letting staff go and rehiring?
It's a good question. Well, it is true that there's uncertainty in our future. That's true. And we're working through that fiscally and regarding the pandemic. It is also true that even this semester, we have had to do some shifting where we've needed more staffing in particular areas, and we've reached first to areas that may be more underutilized given everything that's going on. So we're already doing some of that and reaching to our own and seeing if we can reskill, retrain, transfer, and trying to take care of our community first. That's for sure. Despite the real uncertainty and our fiscal reality, I have to tell you that just having finished my 100-day listening tour, I am incredibly inspired about the opportunities that this institution has to prosper and to thrive and even to grow in the future. I do not see a scenario where we'll need fewer student services. I do see scenarios where we'll have more students online, not necessarily because of the pandemic, but because of an intentional effort to reach more of our adult learners and our working students and students who need more flexibility. And I see that as a growth area that will probably require more talent, not less. And regarding our on-campus presence, as Jennifer was just talking about earlier with a new incredible residence hall that is in the center of our campus and is really going to be both physically and symbolically the center of CU Denver, I actually see a greater on-campus presence as well. So I think the future is bright, but we need to get through these short-term challenges.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. The next question is a note of thanks. Many faculty were able to take the AQ online teaching program this summer. While I've been teaching online for a decade, this program reinforced best practices, included dozens of applied specific strategies and techniques to engage students and achieve desired learning goals. I hope it's offered again for others. So I'll pose that as a question to either the provost or Chris Puckett or whoever is most on top of that one.
Chris, you want to start with that one?
I wasn't listening. I apologize.
So will we be offering AQ and further online training for faculty because it's been much appreciated so far?
I think, AQ, in my understanding, will continue to offer as many options as they can. I mean, I think Margaret Wood and Lindsay Hamilton have really done a great job with AQ. I've met with the folks from AQ again recently. We just provided some funding to continue that. We've gotten, I think, a great deal of progress there, and we hope to continue it. It's not an inexpensive program, but we decided to go and invest in another year of it. So I think if we have not seen an announcement yet from Margaret and Lindsay, there should be one coming out pretty soon. And thanks to everybody who's participated in that. We just got a very nice write-up actually in the AQE handout about the progress that our students and our faculty who are behaving as students had made with that project. So thanks to everybody who has participated.
Great. So the next question is about early retirement. I know the provost and Chris have worked on this the last year or two, but what conversations are reoccurring about transitioning faculty and staff into early retirement and still be able to receive healthcare benefits, which could allow for more highly paid folks to move on?
I can start that if you like. And the university always has the option for phased retirement. There are a couple of ways in which we can do that. The specific plan that we had is something that we consider each year and make actually a request through the chancellor to the president to instigate these special programs. These are things that are available where they've got to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis in a department and in a school. But we've got the option to do a little more of that. But I'll let Chris elaborate on just how to go about, reaching out to start the process.
Yeah, let me be real clear so that folks understand what it is the university can and the university can't do. I'll start with what the university cannot do. There are no true early retirement packages, meaning you have to be eligible to retire before you can actually get university benefits. It's early is a bit of a misnomer. We call it retirement incentives is what we actually talk about. There are not particularly great retirement incentives for staff or faculty who are not tenured faculty. There are some limited options, but they are somewhat limited. What the regents have put in place does mostly apply to tenured faculty. That doesn't mean that there might not be opportunities for people to have conversations in their school and college, or if they're centrally with their supervisors about their future workload, future FTE status, those kinds of conversations. But like I said, most of the situations where that is brought up is in the tenured faculty world, but there are other options. And if you are interested in something like that, you're welcome to talk to your dean. And I'm happy to follow up with those as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question, the chancellor and the provost have talked about bringing revenue and reputation to this university in different ways. Do you think whether the university can develop ways to prioritize, incentivize research so more revenue and reputation can be brought in? Chancellor Marks, do you want to address that?
Sure, I'll start, and Provost, happy to hear your thoughts as well on this one. Yes, research and creative activity is an incredibly important part of who we are and what we do. And we do need to find ways to support our faculty members and our researchers and incentivize and also reward scholarship. I heard a lot about this from our faculty members and our researchers during my listening tour, and this will be a particular point of focus during our strategic planning during this spring.
Great. Provost Nairn, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just underline what the chancellor said. I mean, this is something that's extraordinarily important to us. I mean, the reputation that the campus has, depends a lot on the reputation of the faculty. So we'll, as I said earlier, we'll continue to prioritize making funds available for folks to get preliminary data to try to apply for bigger awards. I mean, the research office is open and more than willing to help people with ideas, move things forward. We want to continue. We've done as everything that we can when folks leave to make it possible for mission critical hires or in replacements on the faculty track so that we don't fall behind in terms of the people that we have here and what they're doing. And we've tried to work with our colleagues at Anschutz where there are opportunities for collaboration and growth around new projects. We've seen quite a bit of growth in bioengineering, for example, due to some expansion at the Anschutz campus with new space. We'll keep looking for every opportunity like that we can. And it's not just lab-based, it's the creative work that people do as well that we want to make sure is fostered.
Great. Next question, I think, is our first one for Alana Jones. How are we doing on international student enrollment? What are we doing to address international student enrollment and retention?
Thanks, Paul, and thanks to the person that asked the question. So yes, international enrollment is really challenging right now, largely because international students have not been able to obtain visas through consular services, and there's been travel restrictions as well. However, I can say that the international admissions team and the whole Office of International Affairs has been working really hard to continue to recruit international students, and we still have a lot of really strong interest from our international students. In fact, we even have a staff member based in China who continues to go to actual in-person recruitment fairs, while the international admissions team based here in Denver participate in a lot of virtual activities. They engage with our agents. So the activities continue, they just look a little different right now in terms of on the recruitment side. We've always used multiple modalities to engage in recruitment of international students, and that hasn't stopped. And the team has been really adaptable in that space. We do have some pretty big hurdles right now, which is the very limited consular services available to get the visas, as well as specific travel restrictions from certain countries, not least of which China, where we have a large portion of our students who are unable to come back to the US. However, the good news is on the retention side is for the International College Beijing program, we are engaging those students in China, and they are participating in Beijing, and the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and everyone involved with the ICB program has been amazingly flexible, just like we have all been during this time, and have found ways to accommodate these students who would have come to Denver and enrolled in courses here. They have accommodated them in Beijing. So we're retaining them in the program. It just looks a little bit different. And also I want to give a shout out to, there's so much great virtual programming happening out there through Student Life and other great organizations. And that includes with international affairs. We are engaging with our international students and keeping them a part of the community, even if we can't see each other in the way that we typically would.
Great. Thanks so much, Anna. And thank you, audience, for continuing to ask questions. We have several more, and I think we'll have time for them, so you can please add them in the Q&A feed. The next one is kind of a budget type question, which I'll address to Jennifer. Since there weren't any raises in July 2020 for performance and likely won't be in 2021, have you considered other ways to reward staff for innovation and hard work during the pandemic? Those of us at the bottom in coordinator positions, et cetera, really don't make enough to weather the immense financial impacts of COVID without any sort of financial raise for 2 years. Is there consideration of still giving raises to people who make less than $60,000 a year, for example?
Wow, that's a big question. First of all, thank you for acknowledging the graduated furlough program that we put into place, and that our employees who make less than $60,000 did not have to take furloughs. And I appreciate those who are taking the furloughs and still working as hard as they are to make sure that our students are served and that our students are learning. And so thank you to everybody who have gone through all of this together with us. And as for where things stand for next year around potential raises for any group, it's really too early to tell at this point. We'll get our first bit of information in early November when we learn what the governor's budget request is. As you'll recall, we took a 58% cut in state funding from the state of Colorado, and we'll need to see how that plays out with the state support for next year. And then, of course, we'll learn more about where our enrollment stands and the mix of our enrollment, as Elena was just talking about. And how that will impact our budget. So we're doing scenario planning actually right now to think through the different possibilities. So at this point, it's really too early for me to tell if there will be any raises at any amount or any level. I'm sorry that I don't have a definitive answer for that at this point, but hopefully as the year progresses, we'll have a lot more information to share on that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next question, I think I'll start with Chris. It's kind of an equity question. It's great that many faculty and staff members have been able to have schedule flexibility and the ability to be at home with their family members. However, a new equity concern has presented itself for people who are required to come into campus. Some people have their remote work requests accommodated and some do not, even if they have similar job duties. Can the campus adopt a more centralized process rather than relying on the opinion of supervisors?
That's a good question. And I think I want to start where Jennifer did a good job answering her question. I want to thank people for coming to work and showing up on campus. It isn't always easy. I'm here today. It is different. It is weird. It's different for all of us. I think that's a good question, and one that I probably will start talking about with our human resources group to think about how we can do a better job of getting guidelines to our supervisors and better training for our supervisors as to what's expected of them. It's actually something that we're working on with our policy group that Michelle mentioned earlier that sent out surveys. It's actually one of the questions that we've gotten many times is there a way to help standardize what supervisors should be expected to do? And so it is something we're working on, and it is something that we want to try and be more consistent about, and want to be able to provide opportunities for both employees to get better at asking questions, but also for supervisors to do a better job of answering them.
Okay, great, thank you. We have time for a few more questions, which is what we have teed up. So I'll move forward with those. One question is, I would like to hear the panelists discuss freezes on research funding for early career faculty. I don't know if the provost or Chris.
I can try to start on that one. The answer may be a little different depending on exactly what research funds imply. So if these are grant funds, then they shouldn't be frozen. So if somebody's having issues with that, they can let us know. We'll try to help get that straightened around. If this is really referring to university funds for professional development, there are some concerns that different schools and colleges have, and just in terms of how people are going to use those professional development funds. So my understanding with from the deans that I have talked to is that we're trying to make those available for research projects that were committed to prior to COVID. So again, you know, hopefully those are not frozen. Certainly the funds that were being made available through Bob Damerau's office for junior faculty startups and so on. For this year, those are being handled through speed types in my office so that they don't get, you know, caught up in budget reductions in the schools and colleges. So if we're still having issues there, you know, let us know. We'll try to help sort it out. But I think this may be a case by case kind of a situation that we have to work through.
Great, thank you. Another question for Elena and her student services role. The pandemic is increasing problems for our low income and first gen students, e.g. who do not have adequate access to high speed internet. What are we doing to lessen the impact on these students?
Thanks, Paul. We have had a number of resources made available to us, whether it's computers or hotspots or other opportunities to help students with their technology access. So my suggestion is that, so Erica Larson has been really great with leading this effort, and from a centralized point of view, there's also been a lot of individualized efforts happening at the schools and colleges. So many thanks to everyone that's stepping in this space. And so what we'd like to be able to do is get people directed to Erica, who can provide information about available resources. We can also put something into the next linked central newsletter and get some information out there and just make sure people see that information again. We've been trying to communicate it periodically, but I know that sometimes people miss those communications, so we'll get it out there again.
Great. Well, I think we've actually covered all the questions you've put out here, either on the screen or with some of our experts behind the scenes. So I just want to thank everybody for very smart and thoughtful questions. I also want to remind folks, as Chancellor Marks mentioned earlier, on November 17th, she'll have her State of the Campus address that'll bring us up to date on all the things that are happening at that point. We also do plan to have a town hall like this for students in later October. So if you'd like to attend that or make your students aware of that, we're looking forward to talking about their questions as well. In the meantime, just wish everyone stay healthy, stay smart, please vote. Election's coming up, as you know. And thanks so much for spending part of your afternoon with us and for asking such great questions. Thank you.